The Sunfallen Road, Chapter 10. The voices were whispering more than ever tonight. For once, I didn't fight them. I just listened. What they said didn't always make sense, but sometimes they told me things, which always made me think of what Klaus has said. Maybe I wasn't mad. Maybe I was hearing things that really existed. Tonight, they seemed to whisper that something was coming. Leaving the machine room, I sat in the foyer of my house and listened. I heard footsteps on the walk outside, and a few seconds later, a ring at the bell. I rose to my feet like a dead woman walking and slowly went to the door. To my great surprise, the caller was Rudolf Abendroth, the Siren Clan violinist I had met more than 2 centuries ago. I opened the door. For a moment, we didn't speak, and then I said, "This is quite a surprise, Rudy." I had not seen him since I left Berlin in 1810. I felt a rush of guilt, for he had been my friend too, and I had abandoned him. He nodded, curtly. "I came because what I have to tell you I could not put in a letter." I nodded. "Come in." He entered the foyer, a vision in black linen pants, a white poet shirt, a pendant like a drop of water hanging from his throat. A black messenger bag hung at his side. He was the same, and yet he was not the same. We crossed the foyer to the living room, and there we seated ourselves on the chairs I kept there. I disdained couches, always had, and so the only place in my house there was a couch was in the machine room. "What is it?" I asked, rather abruptly. I found his presence incredibly disquieting, perhaps because it had been so long since we last spoke. "Klaus is dead." I blinked. "What?" "He gave himself to the sun's rays," Rudy said quietly. "He said he couldn't live without you, and so he must stop living." I stared at my hands. I didn't know where to look, what to do. I didn't know how to take responsibility. "When?" I whispered. "Not a moon ago," said Rudy. I looked out the window into the starry, moonless night. I recalled Klaus's face with perfect clarity, every nuance of his motions, every word he'd ever said. My memory was imperfectly perfect. And yet he was a stranger to me. I had been gone too long. I had loved him, but not in the way he wanted me to. He was my dearest friend until I left Berlin, and now I realized I had not mourned what had passed, and now it was too late. A trickle of blood ran down my cheek. Rudy did not comment, only watched as I brushed away the tear, put my finger in my mouth. "I don't know what to say, Rudy," I said. "I loved him in the only way I knew how, only I didn't love him as he wanted to be loved by me, or perhaps needed to be loved. I have played my part." He nodded. "I would ask you to return to Berlin. The new regent of Berlin is also a woman, the member of the Black Clan." I looked at him, startled. The Black Clan were hardly ever spoken of. They were a clan of witches educated in the magical arts. They were small but powerful, and that one of their number should take a regent's throne came as little surprise. Yet I couldn't imagine the vampires of Berlin accepting a Black Clan regent. They were competent but covert, intelligent but too secretive, and such a person would have a hard time earning the trust of the court in light of those common traits among them. All the same, I shook my head. "My place is here." "Why?" Rudy got to his feet, angry. "You may go where you please. We need you." "You don't need me." I got to my feet and stared at him. "You don't need me. My part in Klaus's tale is over." "Klaus would never have forgiven you for abandoning us," he said. "He meant for you to be the next regent of Berlin, not Lady Ariane." Another surprise. He had never said a word, and yet I understood why he wanted me to succeed him. There had been no one he trusted more. "I have no desire to be regent," I said to him. "Besides, had you even given Her Grace a chance to succeed as regent before you came to me to overthrow her?" I gestured to the stairs. "You don't need me. The only person who needs me right now is the young man asleep upstairs. That's all I know." I knew immediately I'd made a mistake mentioning silver. He smelled the air, smelled silver. His blood. I can fix that. He used the speed gift, raced up the stairs. I sped after him, using the shadow gift to rematerialize before him. "You will not touch him," I cried, and I flew at him, pressing him against the wall on the landing. I hissed, baring my fangs, and he actually recoiled at my rancor. "You will leave this place," I said, my voice echoing with the power of my centuries, shadows pooling on the landing and crawling up the walls, and Rudy made a sound of fright. "And you will not return. He is under my protection, and if you touch him, I will kill you." My anger gave me incredible strength, and I threw him back down the short flight of stairs, where he hissed in pain as he leapt to his feet. "Were you ever my friend?" he asked, incredible sadness in his voice. I subsided. "I was always your friend, Rudy," I said quietly, "but I will not let you use that to force me off my course." I descended the stairs, and he backed towards the door. "I loved you too, and do still," I said softly. "Go home. Try to make the best of it." He began to weep then, a sound that turned my heart. "Will I ever see you again, Melpomene?" he asked me. I reached for him then, drawing him to me in an embrace. He continued to weep, and I hugged him tightly, his blood tears running onto my clothes. "Maybe someday." I released him, and as quietly as he had entered, I left. I locked the door, bolted it fast, and mounted the stair. Silver was on the floor of the hallway in a dead faint, and at once I knew. He'd seen everything. I carried him back to his room, settled him on his bed, awaited. He came around, eventually, and when he saw me, he shrank back in fear. I made a soothing sound and placed my hand on his forehead. "Don't be afraid." "Why?" "Will you hurt me like that too?" he asked me. "Why would I do that?" "I saw," he mumbled. I enfolded Silver's hand gently in my own, and I said quietly, "He threatened to hurt you. I wouldn't allow it." "Why did he want to hurt me?" asked Silver. I told him everything. I told him about Klaus and how I had come from Berlin to where I am now, and what Rudolph had asked of me. I told him that I felt needed by him, and the Berlin court could do without me. Rudy had moved to kill him, probably thinking that if my one tie to this city was gone, then I would have no obstacle to return to Berlin. "So I drove him away," I said to Silver, "because I couldn't bear to see him hurt you." He closed his eyes. "I hate that you felt that you had to do that." I sighed. "I know, and I don't need you. I got along fine before I met you." He was angry, I saw, likely in part due to his difficulty in processing what he had really seen and heard. I tried not to hold it against him, though it tested me sorely. "It doesn't matter if you need me. I think I need you. But I won't stop you if you want to leave." He looked at me with wondering eyes, then sighed again, closing those mysterious blue eyes to the room, to my sad expression. "I know. I need you to." I was lying. I half smiled and leaned forward to kiss his cheek. "I know." I made hot chocolate, and we sat by the fire in the living room, silently for a while. "You need blood to survive," he said. "Why haven't you taken mine?" "You fascinated me," I said. "And now I care about you." "You barely know me." "That hardly matters," I said. "You care about me too. I see it every time you look at me." He looked at me, and his face softened some. "Do you kill people?" "I try very hard not to." "That's not an answer." I sighed. "Every so often, yes. Once in a great while, the thirst is too great to control, but that usually only happens if I have not fed in a while. So I take a little here and there from the humans, and I let them go on their way with little more than a scratch and a fleeting memory of me." He nodded. "When's the last time you killed someone?" 1978, I said. "I was in New England, and the great blizzard kept many people inside for some days. When people finally came out again, I was so ravenous that I couldn't control myself." I paused. If there is one thing that might give me some credibility, I only feed on evil. What do you mean? I seek out people who are criminal and corrupt, not petty thieves and the like, but those who murder for pleasure, who harm others with no just cause, I said, and I feed on them. That way, if they should die from the blood loss, at least society will be a tiny bit safer. I can't approve of you killing anyone, criminal or not, he said. I don't need your approval. This is what I am, and this is what I have to do to survive. I don't like it any more than you do. He glared at me. He knew I was right, but he couldn't accept it. He looked at his hot chocolate. He took a sip. He was thinking about what I'd said, I could see, although it was against his better judgment. How old are you then, really? He asked me finally. I was born in 1784, I said, and I was given the dark gift in the winter of 1803, not long before Christmas. He blinked. You're more than 200 years old. Yes. He thought about what I'd said. Have you ever wanted to be human again? I was surprised. I'd never thought about it, because it probably isn't possible. You don't know that, he said. I've read lots of stories in which monsters can be redeemed and be good again. I looked at him with pain in my eyes, and he immediately realized what he'd said. No, Mel, I didn't mean you were a monster. I meant, I am a monster, I said. I am a monster that has to take from the living to feed a body that should be dead but isn't. But you're not a bad person, he said, coming to kneel at my feet. You have a chance to be redeemed. You can't know that, I said. As you have said, we do not really know one another. He reached up to touch my face. I can believe it. You might not believe in God, but it believes in you. Maybe it can save you. I laughed. I didn't like the sound of it. It was harsh and cruel. There is no God, Silver. If there was a God, why would he allow abominations like us to walk the earth? He sends the sun to chase us into ashes. He sends fire to burn us in our homes. Even the metal for which you are named can kill us. Whatever God you believe in hates us. I got to my feet, stared into the fire. God wouldn't save me. He wouldn't save any of us. I closed my eyes. I felt Silver's eyes on me, even though I couldn't see him. 3 a.m. found me in the library, staring into a fire that was going dim. I thought about what Silver had said, and then I laughed aloud. God? You've got to be kidding me. If God had wanted to save anyone, he would have done it years ago and destroyed vampire kind altogether. Maybe God was on vacation. A friend of mine at the Chicago court had once told me that he thought God was an absentee landlord. I figured he had to be right. No merciful, good, or even just God would have willingly allowed the world to become what it is now, unless that God had decided to take an eternal smoker's break since creating the universe, or else just wasn't paying attention. I laughed again, but I wondered, too.